what prone affords us, what it offers us. Why would we choose to ask somebody to lie face down for FI? And I think that they're a pretty good list. And I'm going to use the first one, access to the entire spine. So in the course of this week, Fran or Jenny or I will take one of these and demonstrate what it means for us as practitioners, how, you know, that you can do that. I think I've just completely fallen out of language. Is that funny? So that's a good sign. I'm going to demonstrate, okay? So can I borrow you? Because you're there and the camera's there. Please lie on your stomach. So you're going to be working, we're going to do something very simple that can be very profound. So, and I've forgotten. Anastasia, I haven't asked your name yet, so I haven't forgotten. I didn't know it. Anastasia. It's quite a star. Okay. So, and are you comfortable like this, Anastasia? Would you like a little something under your ankles? She's not fussed, is she? So spend as much time as you need. I'm just going to borrow your shawl, Anastasia, because you seem to be suggesting some ambivalence about this, so we'll give you an ambivalent response. And I'm presuming you don't mind your ankles being on your own shawl. Is that okay? Okay. So take some time, as much time as you need to support the person in being comfortable. And it's a dialogue, and it, you know, the trial and error stuff, a little bit, you know, it's the little bit high, a little bit low, just right kind of thing if they choose to turn their head to one side. Because again, this position, you want it to be somewhat sustainable. So you negotiate that without getting anal about it, all right? It's how it is. And today's task is your question. You know, your quest is to find out the state of her muscle tonus along the entire spine. All right, well, let's not do the entire spine because we won't go into the cervical just today because that would be a little tricky. Now, Anastasia, this is for my comfort. How would you feel if your arms are above your head for a moment? But, or just even one, yeah, is that okay? Yes. This is just for my benefit because we're working on the floor and I just wanted to get close to her. And what I'd like you to think about is that I want to get a sense of the muscle tonus, and we'll talk after lunch about what I think tonus is or what science would tell us it is, current thinking, but you're going to experience it for yourself. So you know the anatomy of the spine roughly. Some of you might know it specifically. And so you know that down the length of the spine, what you would feel from the outside. Actually, could we have the little skeleton lying alongside Anastasia? So compare and contrast. The big skeleton, sorry. I don't know why I called it little. So that you know that when you feel down the length of the spine, you'll feel these little islands of bone, right, which are actually, this guy's quite happy to lie prone. Very good. Now, if someone's got their head turned, obviously, you know, you're going to feel their spine is going to curve in that plane. But on what you're going to feel are the tips of those spinous processes. So they'll feel like a little island of bone, and then there'll be nothing and an island of bone, and blah blah blah. Now, you probably, if you found those before, yeah. So you've done that. Today, we're interested in the muscle tonus. So if you look either side of those islands of bone, there's this kind of scooped out gutter either side like this, and that gutter is filled with a chain of muscles, mostly erector spinae sort of muscles, and they have a level of liveliness in them, let's say. So what you're going to do is you can start from the top, you can start from the bottom. I'm going to start here because that's where I am, and find where her sacrum is. So there's sort of two little dips there. So there's not going to be any muscle tone in the sacrum because it doesn't have any muscles there, right? So you're not going to feel anything there. But coming up there, you'll start to feel, okay. Now, there's two ways you could do it. You could work down, you could work up one side. Maybe this is the easy way. And these pads of the fingers are what we're interested in. So how you can make your hand gently shaped like this so that this sensitive part of the pads is feeling, not the tips where your fingernails are. They're sensitive, but they're for something. That's for picking up pins. We're not picking up pins. We are feeling, right? So how can I get the pads of my fingers to quietly, gently engage with that muscle? And you've done this. I've read the synopses, you know, with your squishy bottle and your, what was the other things? Cup and the scarf and this, that and the other. So whatever imagery you like, but I'm going to inquire, not dissimilarly to how you did with the calf, these erector spinae here, and I can feel, you know, kind of their inside border, so it's close to the spinous process, and then their kind of roundedness, and where they're kind of finished there. And I'm going, when you do this with each other, you're not doing this in language, you're not going to explain. And you're feeling along the whole length of that gutter of muscles. You can take as much time as you need to, and you can go back to compare, because I can come up to here and I think, oh, that's very different to there. And of course I go back there and it's changed a bit, right? But my fingers are inquiring. Right? I'm not massaging, I'm not intending to, I'm not wanting it to soften, I am purely inquiring. Does that make sense? And part of it is you feel that my fingers are kind of pushing the muscle a little bit that way, because that's something that's quite useful. You know, if you think about muscles being a whole lot of fibres running longitudinally along this length, if a muscle's holding itself really tight, then obviously the fibres aren't going to want to spread much. So you actually get a sense of pushing into the muscle about how much resistance you feel, but actually pushing along across the fibres, you get a sense of how spreadable they are in a funny kind of way. That makes sense. So I'm pushing in different directions just to get a feeling of, then you'll come, you know, across bits of clothing. Think, oh, that muscle feels funny, and you go, the bra strap. So you just have to accommodate to that. You can take, again, all the time in the world, working your way up, etc., all the way up. I'll keep going. You'll often see us doing this quite quickly at the beginning of an FI when people are standing. So we're seeing how much these muscles are engaged at a postural, in terms of postural tone. So I'm working quite quickly now. You can go much slower. So I've got this comparison, you know, and I'm in my memory, I'm remembering what this felt like all the way along. And I can, if I'm interested, I can come feel here versus here. Because I do have two hands. And then, of course, I've got the other side. Yep. So I can start from there. And then I've got the comparison along the length, and I've got the comparison of left and right. So I could work all the way out that length. And then I've got, funnily enough, the cleverness of this and this. So I could actually compare both sides at the same time, which might be interesting for her or not. But there's a multitude of ways you can do it. And what often we do, if I was you'll feel us, we'll put our hand, the whole hand, so we can get a snapshot of the whole thing at the same time, right, both sides. That's extraordinarily clever and shows how the sophistication of our sensing techniques, doesn't it, practitioners? So you can try that as well. What information does that give you? Anything or nothing? Yep. Okay, so we're not, the tendency, for some of you, the tendency you want to go into remediation and then you want to go into diagnosis. Not interested. We're not diagnosticians and we're not remediation people. We are questing people. We're asking a question. That's all we're interested in. We're just gathering information in a way that's informative for us and informative for them, because we're recognising that both of us are going to benefit from this information. That's it. Can we do that? Yes. No, you can't. Yes, you can. I'm sure you can. Would you like to?
Yeah. And I'm going to... What's the point of getting that information?
Yep, very good question. What's the point of getting that information? What's the point?
Well, I mean, I can't help but starting to think, well, am I wanting to understand, well, it's tight, the muscles are tight here, so does that mean that they're using that part more or less, or they're using some other part and that's compensating? I don't feel like I've got anywhere near the knowledge to be able to answer that.
So you're going into diagnostics.
Right.
Yeah, and that's not what we're doing. So you're quite right, there is still a so what factor. We don't want to answer the question, why are we feeling more activity here? And so my language is very clear. I'm feeling the liveliness of the muscles, so the tone. And again, I keep saying I'm going to talk about tone. I haven't yet, but I will. But I want you to feel it first. What does tone mean? It's the liveliness of the muscle, and it's the tone. I'll give you one quick answer. When I'm feeling the tone of the muscle, I'm feeling the state of the nervous system. And I'm actually feeling the self-image of the person. I'm feeling how much juice they're pouring into that area. So I'm getting a direct window into the parts of themselves that they're working a lot and the parts that they are not working a lot. And I can, in a way, use that as a metaphor for their self-image. What works a lot, what doesn't work a lot. So I'm sort of being mean saying we're not diagnosticians, but actually in a way we are, you could imagine that you're, in a way you're a photographer. You're getting an image of them with this, and it's only a piece of the puzzle. And it would be a way of starting a lesson based on I'm getting to know you. So just like if we're, speed dating, heaven forbid for you, poor thing, and I'm asking you a series of questions because I want to get to know you. This is speed dating via muscle tonus, but not speedy, not speedy, but I'm getting to know you.
So is it like we're using it in the same way as as we've been taught so far, to observe someone when they're walking? What do I notice about them? Or using the tom?
Yes, okay. Yeah. So here I'm using their muscle tonus, and the state of their muscles is a direct reflection of the state of their nervous system. And that's really what we're interested in. Yeah. What we do with that is... What do you think liveliness is? Yeah. I pinched the word liveliness off Margaret Mayo. And it's, if a muscle is super lively, like super lively is hypervigilant, right? So what would a hypervigilant muscle feel like? What would a muscle that couldn't give a shit feel like? That kind of thing, that kind of spectrum. So you're right, it's a good question. What are the words for liveliness? So we tend not to use words like tight, because you can have a muscle that's extremely active and it's actually quite long. And that's confusing to people. So, and then tight muscles, people go into this whole schmozzle about, well, I've got to stretch it because it's tight. Well, that's a bit mean. That's like saying if a kid's hyperactive, we're going to put him on the rack and that's going to stop his hyperactivity.
I'm just thinking of Joel yesterday. He's a fairly fit person.
Yep. Yes, and that's why we wouldn't use... Yeah.
So on Joel's calf yesterday, I mean, I could feel the difference, but it was all taut.
Yeah, and so I would say lively, not taut.
Lively.
Yeah, because his muscle actually could have been very long, but still quite lively, quite active. Because actually Joel's very flexible, so he can't actually be tight. Do you know what I mean? You're mostly quite flexible, aren't you? Right, from what I see in ATM. Yeah.
Oh, well, not tight. They were sort of all taut, but you could almost define them by very minute differences in that.
Yeah, very
tension.
lively. Yeah. Yeah. So what would be, help me out with another word for lively then? And if we don't, because tight again would say short and engaged, innovated, active. Pardon? Charged. Yeah. Yeah. Juiced up. Juiced up. Charged.
These are not physical. They're not physical. They're not physical properties.
Don't you think? Don't you think? Deb says that they're not physical properties you can feel.
Those descriptions you just gave.
So could you translate that to sort of hard or dense or soft or... She's got her arms folded. And when Deb's got her arms folded, you don't put the box under her nose.
I know what it means. We're saying charged, and we're saying charged. We're saying lively, and I can interpret
compact.
that. But if we're physically touching,
what would a lively muscle feel like to you?
I would think lively meant it had movement in it rather than the other way around. Liveliness, and that's not what you're saying.
Can you, when your muscles are feeling lively, can you feel that internally? Yeah. So how do your muscles feel when they're like that? So they're really charged up. So for you, painful. And if somebody felt them, what do you imagine?
I've always told.
Feel like a rock. Yeah. Okay. So there is this thing about density and resistance. So the resistance to the push. So when I push into Anastasia's muscle here, this one is more resistant than here. Now I have to calibrate that the muscle here is thinner. It's comparison for her. On that person, exactly. Very good. Yes, it is. Because, I might have, I've got a lot of comparisons in my head for other people, but I have to put them slightly to one side. So what is it for her? What is her, and calibrate it to her level of liveliness. So liveliness is always relative to the person. Absolutely. And that's why I've got the comparison lengthways, I've got the comparison left and right, and then I've got the comparison over time, because getting back to Fiona's question, what's the so what factor of this? If I've established this as some kind of baseline for her and for me, and then, during the course of the week we go and do other things, I can come back here and feel what influence that's had. Yeah. So those words don't all have to make sense to you. I think you've all really been very articulate about the fact that you find the descriptors that fit, and you have a range of them that will make sense to you. So what makes sense to you? And then the purpose of this exercise, in a way, is for you to build up the lexicon for you that matches with your feeling experience. Yeah, this is really interesting. Karen and I were talking about how, people can have opposite reactions to things all the time in Feldenkrais, and we give them the permission to do that. And so we have to have very big brains to allow those paradoxes to exist at the same time. And in the end, it's very liberating to be able to hold a paradox in your head. But in the learning phase, it can drive you crackers. And it can make you fold your arms and feel very frustrated. And that's really good. That's good to sit with. And you can go away and kick somebody as well. That's good. Too.
I think.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
I think I think this is working.
It was.
Okay. Now I can hear it. I think you are talking about the lexicon, and I think it's very important to actually have a lexicon with description, what it means. So when you say lively, what does it mean? Does it mean soft to touch or with resistance? Because unless you describe your terms, we all think different. I mean, if I say now a mouse, you can think of a little creature running around, or you can think of a computer mouse. So I think it's very important to have some terms which describe an actual touch feeling. And then
Sure.
we all know what we're talking about.
Sure. I'm also interested in you developing your own lexicon. Like, I don't want to come up with I'm always going to argue with you. I'm sorry, I don't know why. I'm just always going to argue with you. I can feel the impulse in me. It's going to be fun, isn't it? It's going to be delightful.
I know. Zoran used
Who was the other person? Oh, Zoran did too. Zoran and I are kind of evil twins.
Yeah, he always joined our group because he said he loves arguing with us.
I do love arguing with people. I think it's very fun. And my point about Zoran and I being evil twins, we are complete opposites. We get on like a house on fire. So the Sydney people noticed that, right? You had us one week and then, so that's fine. Lexicons are lexicons. Language is a virus. In the words of Laurie Anderson, language is a virus. It gets us into trouble all the time. Because we will never agree, actually, on a definition. And it's good to tease out. So we have something of a shared understanding in a very loose way about liveliness, which means nothing to some people, and liveliness means something to somebody else. I've now given you a whole other range, which may not help or may help. And then ultimately what I want you to come to this process is, okay, what's my experience of somebody's muscle tonus? Does it make sense in terms of those descriptors or not? Because it doesn't have to. And then we have to have a range of things, like a smorgasbord of definitions. But ultimately, my experience of liveliness is going to be different to yours because it's mine. And I can only share it so much. And poor Anastasia's here probably wanting to move. What ultimately matters is that between my hand and her experience, my experience and her experience, we come to some kind of shared understanding that might not ever be in language.
That's what I was going to say. I think what I was saying about I couldn't put it into words or anything that I knew because I don't know much about physiology, but I'm a visualizer, so I know what I felt. It's in my mind.
Yeah.
It's
in your
a visual
body, actually.
process.
Yeah.
I know. I wouldn't probably even use words. I'm just going to.
Yeah.
I'm lucky because I'm completely naive about it. So what I feel, I can remember.
Yeah.
How that felt.
Yeah.
For him.
Yeah.
And
that's
be different in her.
That's your somatic lexicon is what's the most useful.
Yeah. But if you ask me to explain it, I'm not sure I could, but I know what it is.
And often as practitioners, we can't explain it in language. We get better at it because we have to, and we have to use it in a way. But to make sure that we've got a shared understanding, what you'll find us doing a lot is just feel this and then feel this. And then we have a shared experience because that's more true because, as I keep saying, language is a virus and it's so prone to misinterpreting. Now, in here, we need something of a shared lexicon. Otherwise, I'll drive you crazy. So it's always a compromise. Okay. Anastasia. Oh, one more? Sorry.
Is it like you're doing the scan?
Elevate your box.
Is it like you're doing the scan at the beginning of...
This is like a scan.
Yeah. And then you kind of get the information of how you're going to dance with that person from that. Like if they're super tense, lively, whatever, then you're going to approach them in a way that will help you move with them rather than... And then at the end you go, okay, well, has that changed?
Yes.
Rescan.
Yep, this could very well be my rescan.
At the same time as teaching them, this is how I'm going to touch you and this is how we're going to do it. Yep. And so you get... Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So that's not diagnostic. That's
introductory and exploratory, and it's speed dating without the speed. There's one other thing about the lexicon thing. That's why I brought up about a conversation with Karen, which I've lost my thread. We did an experiment once at uni with students, and we gave them an ATM, and we wrote down their descriptors of how they felt after the ATM. And this is why I have evidence that language is a virus, because what people describe, how they interpreted their sensations after the ATM, I can show you the word cloud, is, Karen and I were saying this, we had every spectrum from, I felt really light, I felt really heavy, I felt really long, I felt really short, I felt really asymmetrical, I felt really symmetrical. And this is what you have to come to grips with when you're becoming ATM teachers. And if you do ask people at the end of the lesson how they felt, you have to have a brain that's big enough that can cope with the fact that some of them are going to say, I felt lighter, some of them I felt heavier, and some of them are going to say, I felt jack shit, felt nothing. So and what they describe, so for somebody who feels light and frivolous and hot, and you know, they just feel like they're going to be blown away by everything, for them when they say an ATM makes them feel heavy, heavy can for them mean substantial and solid and real and credible in the world. And for somebody who, if somebody else makes me feel heavy, that makes me feel dull and tired and I don't want to move. And do you know what I mean? So these descriptors, the subjective judgment that we put after that descriptor can be completely different for people. And this is where you have to be very, not grasp onto the language too much or interrogate it more. Yes. Was that the sweet melon was not, rock melon was not cake? That's the cake. So rock melon cake. Can I just say, this, Martina, is where we do not have a shared understanding of what cake is. And this is the proof of Martina's argument that we need a shared lexicon of what cake is, Jenny. So I reckon that's enough chat. Do you know what you're going to do? You know how you're going to be? I remember Russell Delman doing this. He was one of our trainers, isn't he? And he would sit down and he does this kind of chook thing before he goes, fluff, 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 fluff. And then he's like a piano player, doesn't he, on someone's spine? It's very funny. So you can have that feeling that you're playing the piano and do a little arpeggio up and down, or not. But you can see, as I said, she's been here too long, right? Because I've paddled on too long because she's now adjusting herself. And if she does, of course, in a way you have to start again because that's going to change her tonus, right? She's going to have a curve in her spine, and the structure of that means that these muscles are going to be a little bit shorter on the inside of the curve and they have to be a little bit longer on the outside. They're going to feel different, which is perfectly fine because that's the dynamic nature of it. It is dynamic. They are lively in that sense. The dynamic, they'll change over time. Okay, how are you feeling, Anastasia? Would you like to say anything? Perfectly fine. No. Yeah, we're frightened of arguing in our culture. I don't know why. Italians aren't frightened. What about Chileans? Are you frightened of arguing? Yeah. I think, yeah, you can move now. Just walk around. So it's a compliment, is what I'm trying to say in a clumsy way. But our English Australian cultures, we just go, oh, yeah, fine. And then yeah. Well, I can't have a stiff upper lip. I'm getting a cold. So. Any other questions? Would it surprise you to know that one year I got the most tangential lecturer of the whole university award? No. Off you go.